Kono bangumi wa goren no sponsor no teikyo de okurishimasu. Yeah.
Oh.
Some ancient races believed soaking in blood gave you power. It's probably the origin of perhaps the cringiest of all paraphilias. Blood fetishism. Hematophilia. It's gross. This brings us neatly to Onechanbara, because when it comes to the blood fetish, this series takes the black pudding. It started life as part of the Simple 2000 range of games, which, as we've covered before on Sushi Bites, were budget titles priced at only 2,000 yen. A steal compared to the major console games at the time being priced much higher. In Japan, they were all published by D3 Publisher. The first entry in the Onechanbara series was localized in Europe as Zombie Zone. Being the very first game in this long-running series, it's in its purest form at this point. It should make it easier to talk about the game mechanics, I think. So your goal is no more complicated than killing countless zombies that dare to cross your path. Or is it? You'd be forgiven for thinking Onechanbara is nothing more than a hack and slash, but it's actually quite complicated. Your sword swings are not all that strong, but when you time them properly, they deal massive damage. So you practice to get the timings down, kind of like playing a fighting game. The secret to dealing damage is consistent, correctly timed swings. As you slice up zombies, your sword gets drenched in blood and loses its effectiveness. By wiping the blood off, the weapon becomes sharp once again, and will regain its quick attacking speed. Blood doesn't just affect the weapon, and this is where the blood fetishism angle comes into play. If Aya gets soaked in her enemy's blood, she goes into bloodlust, or should I say, creepy blood orgasm? During this state, attacks deal an insane level of damage, but your health is constantly being drained. To cure this, head to a goddess statue, or use a fragment of a goddess statue from your inventory to cut off bloodlust prematurely. The benefits of being in bloodlust can outweigh the negatives sometimes. It's the only way to kill those awful mudmen enemies. Ugh, I can't stand them, but I try to never reach the state of bloodlust because I don't want to be your enabler, Aya, you creepy girl. Everybody looks like they have a nervous twitch, especially Aya. What's with that twitch? I know the music is pretty happening, but do you really need to dance? Is now really the time for that? Obviously I've been spoiled by the later games in the series that I've played beforehand, as this is a clunky experience that is just far too archaic for my own tastes. Still, I think it's important to always consider the first game and what it brings to the table, because it's that opening gambit, that pilot episode, where not everything works. The Onechanbara is an expanded version of the first game, released as Zombie Hunters and Zombie Zone Other Side in different parts of Europe. The Japanese name is some kind of food pun, because I really want to think about eating when there are waves of blood hitting the screen. It features a handful of new playable characters, but it's ultimately the same game as far as core components go. The new characters are Riho Futaba and Makoto Futaba, another group of sisters. They have no real importance in the canon of the series, they simply come from different D3 publisher titles released in Japan. I find it surprising that this game got a release in Europe considering it's just a retread of the first, but I'm glad it did, because collecting PS2 games is fun, and never, ever, 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 ever gets old. Then along came this, the sequel to the original Onechanbara. It features improved animations, menus, and enhanced visuals. You can pick between Aya or her sister Saki, playable for the first time. Unless you consider the fact that she was an unlockable costume in the first game. If you want to be pedantic, you can switch characters at will using the new tag feature, something carried over into most games that followed it. The most welcome new feature? Free camera control on the right stick. It's pretty pathetic how it works, but you know what? Finally, we're reaching almost playable levels of game design here. Alright, maybe I'm being a bit harsh, but this game needed this. It's about time it was added. Europe skipped this title, having wised up to Tamsoft's decision to release an expanded version of the original Onechanbara, which paid off, because they did the same with Onechanbara 2. Released in Europe as Zombie Hunters 2, Onechanbara is an expanded version of Onechanbara 2. It's also another still rather unnecessary food pun. It features 6 playable characters and an extra story chapter. The 2 new characters, Kiku and Hana, originate from Simple 2000 series volume 87, The Nadesico, an awesome fighting game I'll definitely be covering another time. There isn't much more to say about this title. The improved menus and camera control are present here. This is a very nice game to own, and highly collectible in its European release. Then came this, which you might know as Onechanbara Bikini Samurai Squad. I remember the worldwide release of this was pretty big news at the time. It was released in 2006 in Japan, but the rest of the world had to wait until 2009. I'm just glad we got it in the end. I was a day one buyer, naturally. I reviewed it when I was younger for that website, and I was quite negative about the game. In retrospect, I believe I was far too harsh. The game introduces Misery, my favorite character in the entire series. She's freaking awesome. Given its age, the PlayStation 2 era visuals are blatant and to be expected. It has the same dodgy control and lackluster presentation as the previous titles, but in HD it suddenly has a weird charm. Like that old Californication video by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. It's so gamey. This game introduces Anna, a policewoman who uses guns instead of swords. The plus side is that you can gun down mudmen with relative ease. Those awful, awful mudmen. I just can't stand them. This game also features challenges, such as killing so many enemies or beating so many levels quickly, which unlock equipment you can use in customize mode. Playing dress up. What is this? Barbie's Zombie Adventures? It's not a terrible game by any means, but gosh, it really shows its age. If you find it in a bargain bin somewhere, grab it. Mainly because the DLC is dirt cheap now, and you can get the full experience for around a tenner all in if you do some quality hunting. Localized as Onechanbara Bikini Zombie Slayers, this Wii entry is effectively the sequel to the Xbox 360 game. Releasing your sequel on inferior hardware, that's like when Sega released Valkyria Chronicles on the PS3 and Valkyria Chronicles 2 on the PSP. Who does that, honestly? Well, Sega, apparently. It's the same game again, this time with motion controls. It's funny how good this looks when you put it aside the Xbox 360 game, like the title actually improved graphically. The textures and models are better. I think having all the characters unlockable and not behind a DLC paywall is awesome. You should add this to your collection, especially if you enjoy a little bit of Wii. Let's face it, we all enjoy Wii in one way or another. In 2011, Onechanbara Special came along. This stayed in Japan, though D3 Publisher were interested in bringing it over, provided there was a large enough consumer interest, which I'm guessing there wasn't, seeing as it, well, stayed in Japan. There are some baffling decisions here. First off, why no red blood? I know other entries in the series also did this, but it just feels more egregious here. Seriously, why the heck? Black blood, pink blood, the infamous white blood, because why not make it look like they're soaked in semen, but no red blood. There are also some more pressing non-cosmetic issues I feel I need to raise too. To use items, you have to assign them to your character first. So what happens is you end up starting a mission, you get your health drained, and whoops, forgot to assign some health items, guess you're gonna die. And the free camera control is here, but because of the PSP's limitations, it's set to the directional pad. Yeesh. I do appreciate the gesture, but I've never wanted a right stick more than this in my entire life. You can actually set the D-pad to the right stick in PPSSPP, or if you're playing this on the PlayStation Vita. It's not as smooth, but it's functional. Recommended if you actually want to enjoy yourself to a certain extent. The cutscenes play out with lightly animated character renders and 3D backgrounds, akin to something like Metal Gear Solid Bande Dessinée. It's a clever way to get around system limitations, but I'd have much preferred in-game cutscenes like in Bikini Zombie Slayers. There's a fair few playable characters in this, but I'll never have the desire to play far enough to unlock them or find out who they are. Oh hey! A fully completed save file on GameFAQs. That'll do nicely. This is what could be considered a series reboot, or at the very least a highly important stepping stone. Onechanbara Z, Kagura, was released exclusively on Xbox 360 only in Japan. It featured two new characters, Kagura and Saya. They are goddamn zombie vampires. What is this, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure? Yeah, I wish. They're out for vengeance against their blood mother, Camilla, and also have a feud with Saki and Aya, mostly formed out of jealousy towards them. Saki and Aya appear as antagonists, but are not playable. The Z in the name refers to the Z rating in Japan. This game is nudity, violence, blood, and dismemberment. It's fantastic, and they've kept this up ever since. Yes, much in the same vein as Onechanpuru and Onechanpon, this PlayStation 3 re-release of Z contains a new playable character, a cameo from Dream C Club's No. You can also play the game as Saki and Aya this time around, if you're willing to put down some yen to make it happen. They are DLC, is what I mean. I played through this title recently and it's a whole load better than the previous games, especially now they've powered up Saki's lunge attack. Mudmen are no longer an absolute hassle to deal with. Damn Mudmen, they really ruined the earlier games. The short of it is that I would recommend this game if it wasn't for the next game in the series being even better. Because much like the PS2 days, Tamsoft and D3 Publisher continued to knock it out of the park. At the time of making this video, this is the latest game in the series, and it's available worldwide on PlayStation 4 and Steam, localized as Onechanbara Z2 Chaos.
It's time to heat it up, it's time to light the fire. It's my turn to pump it up, and I want to take you higher.
This is easily the most accessible title. The gameplay has been perfected, the combat flows well, and with all four girls here in playable form, it really stands out as a quality title through and through. The dialogue is fun, the characters are always arguing and disagreeing with one another, and the recurring bosses from the series history are something I highly approve of, especially the return of Misery. God, I love that creepy goth chick. If any title in this series is to be recognised as the shiznit by future scholars, it's undoubtedly this one. And it's an absolute miracle it got released over here, at least that's how I feel when I'm playing it. Like, all those years toiling away at the earlier titles and killing those frustratingly awful mudmen actually meant something. There are 2 sets of DLC that make the girls look practically naked. 10 out of 10. Oh, it would be remiss of me not to mention the movies, at least in passing. There were 2 2008's Onechanbara, and 2009's Onechanbara The Movie Vortex. The latter was released with English subtitles as Bikini Zombie Slayers, if you're curious. They're yet more shamefully dime a dozen Asian violence movies, the likes of which perfectly parodied and honoured by Kill Bill. So if you've seen Kill Bill, or Shogun Assassin, or any of the countless movies of this ilk, then you really know what to expect. That's not a bad thing. These movies are fantastic if solely because you get to see the game series characters soaked in blood and killing countless zombies. It's really quite entertaining and I could really see some people getting a kick out of it. But they're not for me. So let's close this off. If I were to recommend any entries in this series, I would steer you towards Xbox 360's Onechanbara Bikini Samurai Squad or the PlayStation 4 and PC's Onechanbara Z2 Chaos, both of which you can just straight up buy and play without having to deal with region nonsense and language barriers. While both games have their obvious flaws, I think they're fun and inexpensive hack and slash titles that give you some great insight regarding Japan's bizarre guro and schoolgirl fetishes. They're repetitive, as is the series as a whole, but a wonderful time sink if you just feel like laying waste to a dozen hundred zombies. And since finishing this script and letting it fester on my laptop doing absolutely nothing for at least a whole year, a game called Schoolgirl Zombie Hunter was localized and released in America and Japan. It's essentially a spin-off of Onechanbara with gunplay instead of swords. Look forward to seeing it covered in the future, but not now, as I feel we've already spent quite some time looking at scantily clad anime girls today. This has been Sushi Bites. Thank you for watching.